Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning Blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about a new proposed ethics interpretation coming out of PEEC on 529 plans. And it's been almost 20 years since the original guidance was issued for 529 plans, which was back in 2005. So it's been a little while since that original guidance was issued. We did a quick technical correction, but we knew that this much larger project had to be issued. So let's take a look. So back in late August of 24, the Professional Ethics Executive Committee, or PEEC, issued a proposed revised interpretation for 529 plans, which is 1.240.070. Comments are due at the end of the month, October 30th. And this is really in response to a consultation that the PEEC did. So they wanted to know what was on, sort of top of mind for their strategy and work plan, what things needed to be addressed. And a lot of people commented that 529 plans, particularly savings plans, made it very difficult to monitor independence because there were different types of plans that could change what they were invested in without any notice. And so that was something that kind of came top of mind for individuals, and they asked the Professional Ethics Executive Committee to take a closer look. So if we go back to 2005, when the original guidance came out, the Professional Ethics Executive Committee had concluded that a covered member who was an account owner of a 529 savings plan, right? So where it's not specifically going like prepaid tuition, but where you're putting money in and you can use it for any university, they determined that that was a direct financial interest if you were going to be an account holder, and not only in the plan itself, but in the underlying investments held by the plan. And the theory was that the owner selected the sponsor of the 529 plan, right, where you wanted to invest, and you were able to decide which investment options or portfolios you wanted to participate in. And so that was the determination back in 2005. And just as a little reminder, a direct financial interest, when we look at the definition for the purposes of independence, is an interest that is owned directly by an individual under the control of the individual, or beneficially owned through an investment vehicle, estate, trust, or other intermediary when the beneficiary controls the intermediary or has the authority to supervise or participate in the intermediary's investment decisions, right? And so they had made the determination that in this scenario, the employee and the firm would have a direct financial interest in these 529 plans. However, they did a lot of research. If you've been following the PEEC meetings, they've actually put copies of different plans from different states and what you could choose to invest in and how they were set up. And so over the last few years, 529 plans are typically in what we call portfolios. So you can select from a portfolio, and there's different types of portfolios. You can have a risk-based portfolio. You can have a year of enrollment portfolio. You can have an age-based portfolio. You could have an individual portfolio. So lots of different choices. So my daughter, who is in high school, is in an age-based, right? So basically when she was a baby, we invested in her 529 plan. And then each year, as she gets closer and closer to going to college, they automatically readjust what we are invested in. They don't have to give us any notice. They just go out and do it. So while I'm selecting the portfolio, and we are able to have access in terms of what are the underlying investments, you're not always notified of changes in the underlying portfolio, particularly age-based plans, right? They just automatically do it as part of the theory that as you get closer to college, you need to have it more liquid, more stable, right? When she was a baby, a lot of equity, a lot of international, and then closer and closer to bonds and cash as you get closer to going to college. And so they're automatically doing it. You've given them the authority to do it. So not always are we getting this. But in addition to these concepts, some of our new understanding is that really you don't own the underlying investments, right? In fact, you own units, right? That's how they actually write your statement, which is really very similar to a more of a mutual fund concept. So it's a unit of participation in a trust. And we really don't have control over what underlying investments are offered, right? So the state gets to decide what they want to do, and they're the ones who make the decisions. In addition, the plan manager can decide to change the portfolio at any time, right? So in this scenario, like age-based ones at various intervals, they automatically are going to do this, and you have no control over the underlying investments in there, right? So going back to sort of the definition of direct financial investment, control is obviously very questionable there. In addition, the federal tax code limits the account owner's ability to move from one portfolio to another. In fact, it's limited to twice per calendar year per beneficiary. So if they did invest in something, you have not a lot of opportunity to be able to make adjustments, right? So in this scenario, when we look at B and C definitions, right, we're not going to meet those requirements. And so as a result, looking at this new information around not necessarily being notified, not being able to really control the underlying investment, not having that direct financial interest, the update that was made was several. First, if the plan is a client, then obviously independence would be impaired if the CPA is an account owner. And that applies for both prepaid tuition and savings plans, right? So if you're auditing the actual plan itself, then we have a problem. However, when we go into our savings plans, we get a little bit of a different perspective. So instead of that direct financial interest that they had previously indicated, the account holder has an indirect financial interest in the plan's underlying investments because the account owner's interest is evidenced by a unit of participation, which is again a municipal fund security, and not actually shares of the underlying. In addition, the account owner does not have the ability to control or influence the underlying investment comprising the plan, right? So in these scenarios, if they're you're going to look at this as an indirect as opposed to direct financial investment. So if you have a 529 plan and you have no attest clients in there, obviously then no threats to independence. But what happens if you do have, right? So when an underlying investment in an account owner's 529 plan is an attest client, then we do have threats to independence. But now instead of it being a direct financial interest, which you can have none, not even an immaterial amount, now when we look at this, we would have to consider the materiality of it, right? So the self-interest threat would not be an acceptable level, and independence would be impaired if there was a material amount. The attest client was a material to the covered member there. In that scenario, you'd have to apply one of the following safeguards. So they gave us three. The first one, you reallocate the plan holding so that there is no material indirect financial interest. 2, you transfer the account to another sponsor's 529 savings plan that does not include a material indirect financial interest, or you transfer the account to another account owner who is not subject to the independence rule. So 3 different options here. Again, only if it becomes a material indirect financial interest. Otherwise, immaterial indirect financial interests are not a problem. And so this obviously is going to be a big deal for especially those who do a lot of work with larger companies that are part of these investments, not having to track and wonder what's happening and to know when these changes are happening. I think this is something that's really a nice option here. So feedback and comments are due by October 30th. It is a simple email, ethics-exposuredraft@aicpa.org. I am sure they would love to hear from you. And if you have any experience with any of these different types of portfolios, I'm sure they would love to hear your story. All right, so with that, it's a wrap on this week's blog, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future on next week's blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.